In this question, you have to point out the option that includes the correct events that occur during inspiration. Now, event A, contraction of diaphragm. This is correct. During inspiration, the diaphragm contracts and moves downwards, increasing the volume of the thoracic cavity and helping air to enter the lungs. Event B, contraction of external intercostal muscle. This is also correct. The external intercostal muscles contract during inspiration, raising the ribs and expanding the chest cavity, which further increases the thoracic volume. Event C, pulmonary volume decreases. Now, this is not correct. During inspiration, the pulmonary, that is the lung volume, increases as the thoracic cavity expands, thus allowing air to flow into the lungs. Event D, intrapulmonary pressure increases. Now, this is also incorrect. During inspiration, the intrapulmonary pressure decreases, that is, it becomes lower than the atmospheric pressure, which causes air to flow into the lungs. Increased pressure would result in air being expelled and not inhaled. Hence, the correct answer is option C. In this question, you have to identify the wrong statement with reference to transport of oxygen. Option A, higher H plus concentration in alveoli favors the formation of oxyhemoglobin. Now, this is a wrong statement because a higher H plus concentration, which indicate a lower pH, that is the acidic pH, does not favor the formation of oxyhemoglobin. Rather, it promotes the release of oxygen from hemoglobin, a phenomenon which is known as the Bohr effect. Hence, it is the correct option. Option B, lower partial pressure of carbon dioxide in alveoli favors the formation of oxyhemoglobin. Now, this is true. At a low partial pressure of carbon dioxide, that is in the alveoli, promotes the formation of oxyhemoglobin because reduced carbon dioxide levels leads to higher pH, which enhances the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen. Hence, it is incorrect option. Option C, binding of oxygen with hemoglobin is mainly related to partial pressure of oxygen. Now, this is also true. The binding of hemoglobin is largely determined by the partial pressure of oxygen. So, at high partial pressure of oxygen, such as in the lungs, oxygen readily binds to hemoglobin. But at lower partial pressure of oxygen, such as in the tissues, oxygen is released. Hence, it is incorrect option. Option D, partial pressure of carbon monoxide can interfere with oxygen binding with hemoglobin. Now, this is also true. Carbon monoxide competes with the oxygen for binding to hemoglobin. So, even a small amount of carbon dioxide can interfere with the oxygen transport because carbon monoxide binds to hemoglobin with much higher affinity than oxygen. Hence, this is incorrect option. In this question, you have to identify the partial pressures of oxygen and carbon dioxide at alveoli, that is the site of diffusion. Now, alveolar partial pressure of oxygen is 104 mm of Hg, that is mercury, and alveolar pressure of carbon dioxide measures about 40 mm of mercury. Hence, the correct answer is option B. In this question, you have to select the favorable condition required for the formation of oxyhemoglobin at the alveoli. Now, factors favoring the formation of oxyhemoglobin at the alveolar level include high partial pressure of oxygen, low partial pressure of carbon dioxide, decreased hydrogen ion concentration, and lower temperature. So, conversely, conditions conducive to oxygen dissociation from oxyhemoglobin at the tissue level entails low partial pressure of oxygen, high partial pressure of carbon dioxide, elevated levels of H plus, and increased temperature. Hence, the correct answer is option B. In this question, two statements are given. One is assertion and the other is the reason. And in the light of these two statements, you have to choose the correct option. Now, assertion states that a person goes to high altitude and experiences altitude sickness with symptoms like breathing difficulty and heart palpitations. Now, it is true, a person going to high altitude often experiences altitude sickness, which includes symptoms like difficulty in breathing and heart palpitations. And it is a common response to being in low oxygen environment at higher altitudes. The reason is that due to low atmospheric pressure at high altitude, the body does not get sufficient oxygen. Now, the reason is also true because at high altitudes, the atmospheric pressure decreases, which means there is less oxygen available in the air. So, as a result, the body struggles to get sufficient oxygen, leading to symptoms like shortness of breath and heart palpitations. Thus, both A and R are true, and R is the correct explanation of A. Hence, the correct answer is option B. In this question, you have to identify which is not the function of conducting part of respiratory system. Option A, inhaled air is humidified. Now, it is true. The conducting part of the respiratory system humidifies the air. Hence, it is incorrect option. Option B, temperature of inhaled air is brought to body temperature. It is also true. The conducting part also helps to regulate the temperature of the inhaled air, warming or cooling it to the body temperature. Hence, it is incorrect option. Option C provides surface for diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Now, the conducting part does not provide a surface for gas exchange, that is, diffusion for oxygen and carbon dioxide. This function is carried out by the alveoli. Hence, it is the correct option. Option D. It clears inhaled air from foreign particles. It is also true. The conducting part clears foreign particles through mucus and cilia, filtering the air before it reaches the lungs. Hence, it is incorrect option. In this question, you have to choose the correct option that represents that under normal physiological conditions in human being, every 100 ml of oxygenated blood can deliver what amount of oxygen to the tissues. Now, under normal physiological conditions, every 100 ml of oxygenated blood delivers approximately 5 ml of oxygen to the tissues. And this is based on the difference between the oxygen content in arterial blood and venous blood during normal metabolic activity. Hence, the correct answer is option A. Options B, C, and D are incorrect as this represents incorrect data. In this question, you have to choose the correct option that represents the vital capacity of lungs. Option A, IRV plus ERV plus TV. Now, vital capacity, that is VC, is the maximum volume of air a person can exhale after a maximum inhalation. Thus, it is the sum of inspiratory reserve volume, that is IRV, plus expiratory reserve volume, that is ERV, and tidal volume, that is TV. Thus, it is the correct option. In this question, You have to match the components given in list 1 with those in list 2. Now, expiratory capacity, that is EC, is equal to tidal volume, that is TV, plus expiratory reserve volume, that is ERV. Hence, A matches with 2. Now, functional residual capacity, that is FRC, is equal to expiratory reserve volume, that is ERV, plus residual volume, that is RV. Thus, B matches with 4. Now, vital capacity, that is VC, is equal to ERV plus TV plus inspiratory reserve volume, that is IRV. Hence, C matches with 1. And inspiratory capacity, that is IC, is equal to TV plus IRV. Thus, D matches with 3. Hence, the correct answer is option C. In this question, you have to identify the factors that are favorable for the formation of oxyhemoglobin in alveoli. Option A, low partial pressure of carbon dioxide and high hydrogen ion concentration. Now, this is incorrect because high hydrogen ion concentration means low pH, and this promotes the release of oxygen from hemoglobin and not its binding. Option B, low partial pressure of carbon dioxide and high temperature. While low partial pressure of carbon dioxide is favorable for oxygen binding, but high temperature tends to decrease the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen. So, oxygen is released. Hence, this is incorrect. Option C, high partial pressure of oxygen and high partial pressure of carbon dioxide. This is incorrect because high partial pressure of carbon dioxide promotes the release of oxygen from the hemoglobin due to the Bohr effect. Option D, high partial pressure of oxygen and lesser hydrogen ion concentration. Now, in the alveoli, high partial pressure of oxygen is present, and this favors the binding of oxygen to hemoglobin. And lesser hydrogen ion concentration means higher pH, and this also favors the formation of oxyhemoglobin, thus enhancing oxygen uptake in the lungs. Hence, this is the correct option. You have to match the components of list 1 with that of list 2. Now, residual volume is the amount of air that remains in lungs after a forceful expiration. That is, this air cannot be expelled completely and helps to keep the lungs partially inflated. Thus, A matches with 3. Now, vital capacity is the maximum amount of air a person can exhale after taking the deepest possible breath, which includes inspiratory reserve volume, tidal volume, and expiratory reserve volume. Thus, B matches with 1. Now, expiratory capacity is the volume of air that can be expired after a normal inspiration. Therefore, it includes tidal volume and expiratory reserve volume. Thus, C matches with 4. Now, tidal volume is the amount of air that is inhaled or exhaled during a normal relaxed breath. Thus, D matches with 2. Hence, the correct answer is option C. In this question, two statements are given. One is assertion and the other is reason. And based on this two statement, you have to choose the correct answer. The correct answer is option C, as nearly 20 to 25% of carbon dioxide is transported by RBCs, whereas 70% of it is carried as bicarbonate. About 7% of CO2 is carried in a dissolved state through plasma. The binding of CO2 with hemoglobin is related to the partial pressure of carbon dioxide. Partial pressure of oxygen is a major factor which could affect this binding. Now, when partial pressure of carbon dioxide is high and partial pressure of oxygen is low as in the tissues, more binding of CO2 occurs, and percentage of gas transported depends upon its partial pressure. Now, if partial pressure decreases, transportation of gases also decreases with hemoglobin. So, reason is the correct explanation of assertion.